My name is Samantha Watson. I'm the CEO at the SAM Fund, and we have Greg Perrin and Michelle Landwehr also at the SAM Fund, and I'll introduce our presenter in just a minute. Just to give you guys a quick background on what this is all about and just some logistics before we get started. SAM Fund is an organization that's based in Boston, but our programs are national, and we're designed specifically to help young adults manage their financial challenges after cancer, because we know that cancer isn't free, and we know that especially for young people, it can be exceptionally challenging to manage the costs of sort of real life as a young adult while also dealing with the cost of cancer, residual medical bills, and co-pays, and all this other stuff. So we provide direct financial assistance. We provide online support and education. You can find more information about all of that on our website, which is www.thesamfund.org. A few quick logistics about today's webinar. So this webinar is part of our Moving Forward with Your Financial Health series, which is all archived on our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/samfundtv. We try and do as broad a range of topics as we can possibly come up with, and so we've done presentations in the past about managing medical debt, finding a health insurance plan, finding financial assistance for college and dealing with student loans. All of these things we'll share links to at the very end of the presentation. We've done webinars on family building and life insurance, and the list goes on. All of them are archived on our YouTube channel, so if you want to go check them out at any time, please do so. Please share them. They're there to be helpful. They're totally free of charge. Over the next hour, if you have any questions, just type them into the box on your screen, and we'll do our best to get to as many as possible during the presentation. If you think of ones afterwards or we don't get a chance to get to your question, we will follow up. You can always email us anytime at webinars@thesamfund.org. If we don't get to your question, we'll follow up with you directly. So I think that does it for logistics, and I am really just happy to be presenting today's webinar and specifically today's presentation, today's presenter, excuse me, because it's a topic that really hits home for me. I was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma when I was 21. I was a senior in college, and there are so many things on a college campus that make life challenging, right? So much stress, so many things to think about. And then you add cancer into the mix and everything stands still, and it makes an already challenging experience that much more difficult. And we created this webinar because we know that there are some things that college students need to know if you're dealing with cancer. There are, specific questions you have that most of your peers probably aren't dealing with or not thinking about. And it's so important to make sure that you feel well supported while you're on a college campus. So I'm even happier to introduce today's presenter because she was such a support to me personally when I was in treatment. She made sure that when I had to leave school, everything went smoothly. And more importantly, when I came back to school, that everything went smoothly. She had my back every step of the way. She is an incredible resource. Her name is Michele Rosenthal. I'll give the formal introduction now, but I needed to just share my personal experience with her because I'm a huge Michele fan, and I'm so happy that all of the support that I receive from her is something that she's able to provide to all of you today and hopefully many more people in the future. So please share today's webinar with anyone you know who's in college and dealing with cancer because it promises to be very helpful and very informative. Okay, so now more officially, Michele Rosenthal is an educational consultant with over 30 years of experience in higher education. She's working now to help young adults navigate their cancer diagnosis with their college experience. She's already helped countless young adults, of which I am fortunate to be one, as well as their families, find the appropriate on-campus resources to develop realistic plans to fit their unique needs, and circumstances. Currently, she's the Director of Undergraduate Programs at the Sawyer Business School at Suffolk University. She's also a volunteer for young adult program workshops at the Blum Family Resource Center at Dana-Farber, which are open to anyone, regardless of whether you're in treatment or where you're being treated. And she's created these presentations and these workshops specifically for the college-aged young adult dealing with cancer. And so I don't want to talk anymore and take up any more of her time because we are so lucky to have her here doing today's webinar. Michele, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
This is Michele Landwehr just piping in. Just for 1 second, I'm going to give the screen over to Michele Rosenthal. Just a quick heads up, at the end of the presentation, you're going to have a brief follow-up survey pop up on your screen. You're just going to say OK when it pops up there. It should take you no more than 2 minutes and is hugely helpful to us. So for everybody who is able, thank you so much in advance for doing that.
Well, maybe while we're figuring this out, and hopefully we will figure it out soon, I did want to share
a little bit about our resources.
Yep, I was going to share this at the end of the presentation, but since we have a little bit of time right now, I'll share it with you now. That we have a few resources that we want to also provide to you. We were going to do it as sort of next steps after this webinar, but we'll just do it before the webinar starts. The first is a resource list on our website, which is specific to undergrad tuition. And you'll see if you go to our website, which is www.thesamfund.org, there's a menu in the middle of the screen, and the third one in says what do we do, or what we do, excuse me. You'll see grants, webinars, finances toolkit. You can learn all about those programs. And then right under that, you'll see resources. And if you click on resources, we have 5 separate resource lists, one of which is specific just to undergrad tuition assistance. Unfortunately, we don't know of any organizations right now that are accepting applications for tuition scholarships, but there are a lot of them, which is the good news. So definitely check the organizations out. You can download the whole resource list as a PDF, or you can just peruse them on our website. Either way is good. The other thing I was going to share is that we did another webinar earlier this year with Sherry Avery, who talked about managing student loan debt and figuring out how to go back to school dealing with financial assistance. So check those out. I see Michelle's slides just popped up on the screen, so it looks like we are good to go. Michele, it's all you.
Thank you so much for that very, very kind introduction. It feels like just yesterday, although I'm glad it's not yesterday, because so many wonderful things have happened since, especially for you and your wonderful vision for the SAM Fund. As Sam said, I've been privileged to be in higher education for many years and to hold positions at Mount Holyoke College and Brandeis University and the colleges of the Fenway, right across from Dana-Farber Cancer Research Institute, and now proudly at Suffolk University within the Sawyer School of Business. Sam has really been my inspiration for doing the college and cancer work that I do, and really, I guess, have been involved in this way for about 5 years. And through the various administrative positions that I've held within student affairs and academic affairs, I've just learned so much about college and university life and how to best navigate and just the myriad of resources that are available. And so my intention today is certainly to be as helpful as I can be, to offer what I know, which is a lot, again, about college and university and all the wonderful folks that work within that sometimes can be difficult to access or to find, and I want to be helpful with that. So I would like this webinar to be as helpful and meaningful as it can be, and Michele and Greg have been very, very helpful in setting up this poll that some of you are completing now. The challenge, and I'm sure some of you have listened to other webinars or maybe presented on your own, but the challenge of webinar is I sit now in front of a monitor and I can't see your wonderful faces, and so I can't facilitate the kind of discussion that I typically do with feedback. So please feel free to write in. Again, a couple of folks have completed the poll, which is helpful. As I am talking and going through my slides and sharing some anecdotes with you, please, 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 to all participants, write in with your questions. They're all anonymous questions, but I will do my very best to respond. And for those of you that might want to speak with me after the webinar, we can certainly I'm certainly happy to be available to you. So this is really about navigating college and cancer, and I can tell you that what I have found in my work with young adults who have been diagnosed with cancer, and I would say just working, and again privileged to be working with college students for as long as I have. What I often find is when difficulty happens, when the unexpected happens, we're woefully unprepared. And college for so many can be such a formative experience. I've never quite bought into the college will be the best 4 years of your life, because I believe that there are many years before and many years after. But for many of us, I think we go into the experience expecting it will be the best 4 years. Certainly positive experiences such as making new friends, exposure to new ideas, are often intertwined with difficulties and varied academic expectations, difficulty fitting in, figuring out how high school and elementary and middle school preparation actually prepared one to be at college. So that's all the stuff that is kind of most of us expect as we cross the threshold of a college or university, or even before that, and thinking about the time spent filling out applications. But regardless of all of that, a cancer diagnosis is definitely not part of any student's plan for college. And as I'm sure most of you who are listening to me today, have varied experiences and stories and memories, some I'm sure very close, about that conversation, which was, you have cancer, with your doc or team of physicians, and in trying to digest the diagnosis, it's thinking about college, and you've just started, or you're thinking about just starting, or you're in your junior year or getting ready to graduate, and just wondering really what that means. And so I do want to provide some information, and know that in many ways I'm talking to a fairly traditional audience of students and potentially participants today who are already in college, or again maybe in the application phase, and trying to provide some general information, or I'd like to provide some general information again about how to best navigate. So let me, oops, now I'm having another glitch here. One second. Okay. So the first thing that I like to think about in terms of being in college and getting a diagnosis is creating a network. And I think this can be very, very difficult, because I think for many who are diagnosed, this can feel like a very isolated time. It's, again, for many, the last thing that anyone would expect, and for some, they just don't want to tell anyone. And when I think about the many students with whom I've worked that have been diagnosed, that's often the most difficult part. And it's confidential, and it's your information, but I think it's important to think about a network of people and a network of resources that will support you. College campuses are filled with support and folks that want to be helpful. I think that too for anyone can be incredibly overwhelming, and no one should feel that they need to share their news again with all of those resources, but should really think carefully about who those people might be. I'm not sure if there are any Grey's Anatomy watchers out there. You can write in if you are. I only evoke that show because two of the characters, actually one is no longer on the show, but a strong friendship between two of the characters, and they both refer to one another as their person. And I love that. I love that kind of phrase, and thinking about people in your life as your people. And so I take that phrase as I think about creating a network. And so that might be, and I guess the other piece that I want to say is many young adults with whom I've been privileged to interact and to work with are incredibly high achieving and have often never asked for help before. And again, if that's you, feel free to please write in, but have never really asked for help before, and have kind of gotten through high school and all the grades before, and certainly I'm sure for many had support from friends and family, or maybe a guidance counselor, but have pretty much done it on their own. And so for some, thinking about creating a network and asking for help is quite new, and again, I don't take for granted how difficult that can be. So your network might be one of your professors, someone, again, that you trust, so the semester may have begun. you're sitting in class, the diagnosis is weighing heavy, you're thinking, who might I talk with? Out of your 4 or 5 professors, there might be someone that you feel is maybe more empathic, that you feel like you can speak with. And I can tell you, based on my experience, once students start to really build relationships with their faculty, what they find is those folks are probably of the most helpful people on their campus. I note, too, the Director of Disability Services and Support. Some of the titles that I use are different. Many of the titles actually are very different from campus to campus, and a lot of the work that I do is just sitting with a student to figure out who does what. Campuses have a maze of resources and a maze of people that do very similar work, but titles are different on every campus. I think the Director of Disability Services and Support, or the Director of Disabilities, is probably of the most important people to connect with, because again, based on your diagnosis, based on accommodations that you might need, and so it might be a single room because of autoimmune concerns. It might be transportation because of feeling tired. It might be low distraction testing or separate space to take an exam because of concerns about chemotherapy and maybe how that's affecting memory or attention, or just needing quiet. And the Director of Disabilities is the person that would work with you to secure any accommodation that you might need. Director of Health Services or a member of her or his staff also can be incredibly helpful. I would say that it's important to think about a counselor from the counseling center. And again, even if you're going into this experience feeling a lot of outside support, my recommendation is, again, in this theme of a person, having someone that you know once a week you can talk with privately about this experience, how connected or disconnected you might be feeling, but again, a helpful resource. Your class dean, and again, campuses are different. So some campuses have an academic dean, or most have certainly an academic advisor. That's the person working with you to plan your academic schedule and might be helping you, and I'll refer to this a little bit later, plan a course load that really matches your energy, what your diagnosis is, and whether you might need to think about taking a reduced course load for a semester or two. Student Services has a myriad of folks in the Dean of Students office and student activities, because I think it's very important to stay involved. So that's just an example of some of the resources that might be helpful as you think about creating your network. I think the most important point that I note there is to be choosy. It's not one size fits all, and there might be a wonderful dean that 5 of your friends love, and for some reason you don't feel like that's the person that will make a connection for you, and so find someone else. Be choosy. The most important thing is that you have support of people that are going to help you talk through what's going on for you and help you figure out how to advocate. I'd have a question here from a participant who asked, what if you're a freshman and don't know your professors or deans yet? That's a wonderful, wonderful question. So I'm assuming that the person that asked this question has just gotten to campus or maybe recently gotten to campus. I would encourage you, if you're just starting, so most campuses are kind of beginning classes over the next couple of weeks. There will be orientation sessions, and at those orientation sessions, like, all the resources are there. I would encourage you to go to those sessions. You know, you'll meet a lot of people. You'll be introduced to resources on panels or in presentations. Kind of, you know, think about how you feel in those presentations and who you might want to reach out to. I think as a first-year student, you will meet resources quickly. My suggestion for someone just starting is to reach out to the Dean of Students. So that would be one of my first go-tos. I would also say the Director of Health Services. So those would be the first 2 people that I would think about. Again, as an incoming student, the Dean of Students on most campuses oversees residential life and housing, works closely with the counseling center and really all of the out-of-class resources on campus. So she or he, after talking with you, will really help to direct you. And again, she or he might make an immediate connection with you, and they might be part of your immediate network. And the Director of Health Services also, because he'll want to talk quickly about any accommodations. And as I say that, it's important to note that typically accommodations, so if you needed help with transportation or needed an environment which included low distraction testing, it's so important and helpful for staff to know these kinds of things up front. It's hard if no one knows, because accommodations are typically not retroactive. So if no one knows, it's hard, although I'm sure folks will be very empathic, but hard to be helpful with information that comes in a little bit late. So I would encourage you to kind of take a deep breath and reach out, and that would be my suggestion for the resources to start. I hope that's helpful, and please feel free, the person that asked that question, to ask a follow-up question if I didn't get to all that you were wondering about. Okay. My next slide, that's hard for me. Okay. Here is your academic plan. So it's important to know, and again, speaking to the first-year student that wrote in, and there might be others of you who are sophomores, juniors, and seniors, or some of you that maybe are coming back to campus after some time away, to know that, well, I'll start with my last point, that there really is an exception to every rule. And I will say, if I can, working with Sam, I remember very clearly talking with her through her treatment, and she shared with me some stories of young adults that she was meeting that were attending, that were students at various colleges, and some that she shared, you know, were really not getting the kind of support that they had hoped for. And I remember thinking, gosh, I hope that they stay in it and try to find someone that maybe can be more helpful. I think, again, in terms of self-advocacy, I just really stress the kind of reaching out and getting to know folks, because those folks will help to come up with an academic plan that is really workable for your unique situation and circumstance. So some things to just know that are possible, and again, every campus refers differently to what these exceptions are. But you know, a typical workload or might be 15 to 18 credits. Students might take 4 or 5, sometimes 6, although that's heavy on most campuses, but a standard workload. Know that you can make a request to have a reduced course load. That those requests typically, and again varies from campus to campus, might be through conversation with a staff member in the office of the registrar. It might be your academic dean. And again, this is where a dean of students can generally be very helpful, because they can direct you to figure out how to best ask the question. And again, health services and disability services will also be helpful, because they would generally support that request for a reduced course load. And sometimes, you know, as a young adult might begin the semester feeling absolutely fine, treatment is going well, therapy appointments are going well, and then all of a sudden things change, and maybe energy changes based on a new medication regimen, a new chemotherapy plan, and so sometimes these requests need to be made a little bit later. And again, that's why I keep stressing it's just important to be connected from the beginning, so the possible request doesn't necessarily come up as a surprise. There's one point, just lost my train of thought. It will come back to me. Exceptions to your plan. So again, you might begin, you know, decide 4 years is what you would hope, or how long you would take it would hope to complete your education. Many students take classes in the summer, and that's certainly not just about a cancer diagnosis. That's for a whole host of reasons. And I think about the many years that I've been doing this kind of work at many different colleges and universities, and I can tell you, although it might not it might be hard to believe that it's true, but students ask for exceptions for a whole host of reasons. So college and university administrators and professors are certainly used to that, and sometimes often expect that these kinds of requests for exception will be made. I just remembered what I was thinking. Sometimes, as I think about young adults with whom I've worked, semester's going fine, end of the semester is nearing, it's time for finals and final projects, and it's just too much at the end. And know that options like requesting an incomplete in a course are definitely viable options. Again, varies from campus to campus, but an incomplete may mean that a student has all through the summer to finish a course, and sometimes actually even until the next academic year or longer. So that's important too before making a potential course choice just to stop and take a semester off. Know that one possibility that I've worked with many young adults on is to take fewer courses and then maybe ask request incompletes at the end of a semester. Okay, Michelle or Greg, just a quick, if I can ask you, are you hearing me okay? And anyone?
Yep, we're hearing you just fine.
Yeah, hearing just fine. Okay. All right. Any other questions or other questions have come up based on anything that I've shared to this point? Yeah.
We just had a rather lengthy question coming in that had more to do with student loans, so I'm not sure if it's going to be completely applicable. But we can maybe save that for the end or send that along.
Yeah, I might have just a couple of thoughts to share about that. Okay. Let me share just common campus resources with you. And again, every campus a little bit different in terms of what they're called. Quad director, head resident, residence coordinator, staff within the residence halls who can be helpful for those of you that are choosing to live on campus. There's typically the director of a housing program, class dean who I've mentioned, academic advisor, variation among campuses, but potentially a dean of studies or a dean of the college, dean of arts and sciences, dean of the business school. And you know, these titles, as I hear myself say them, can feel rather daunting, I think, for first-year students, but really anyone, if you haven't accessed these folks before. And sometimes students will think, oh, you know, I would only go to these folks if I was having difficulty and I just want to deal with this on my own. But again, a whole host of reasons, myriad of reasons that these folks are accessed, and I can tell you that they absolutely want to be helpful to you. And sometimes, you know, it's helpful to start with someone in a leadership position, again, just to direct you to the right person or resource. Absolutely individual faculty, counseling center, again, health center staff with whom I mentioned, financial services, important, and there's a question, it sounds like a little bit later, about scholarship opportunities, which certainly Sam, Michelle, and Greg will address about regard to the SAM fund. But I can tell you, too, that the financial services office, the financial aid offices on campus, the Bursar staff, generally wonderful, want to be helpful. You may have begun before starting college in a certain financial circumstance. Things change because of the diagnosis. If the office and staff there don't know that, they can't necessarily be helpful and review the financial plan or aid that may have been given and opportunities that they might offer. So in addition to outside resources, I always suggest that a conversation happens with a staff member in a financial services office. Staff in the Office of the Registrar, again, are helpful consultants about asking to take a reduced course load, asking to take an exception, make an exception to an academic policy, and are also helpful for students that have taken time away and want to come back to campus, or maybe, again, need to secure a leave of absence or an extended time away. And again, I mentioned the Office of Disability Services and Support before. I think it's very important for college students in general to be very involved with co-curricular life on campus. There are an overwhelming amount of clubs and organizations, certainly on most campuses. I think that as a young adult with cancer, in college, it's so important that you do everything that you can to keep doing the kinds of things that are important to you. So it might be continuing to sing in an a cappella group. It might be trying to continue to be involved in an athletic outlet. It might be going to campus lectures, activities, you know, a one-time meeting. I think that the diagnosis at this time in a person's life can be so incredibly isolating that I would do everything I could to encourage you not to isolate yourself. And where you can, just do your best to consider what and who are important to you, and to stay involved and to be part of that community in any way that you can. Certainly consider your friendships and your confidants and clubs and organizations, outlets that are important to you. I've spoken with many students who have been diagnosed. I was speaking with a young woman actually just very recently who talked with me about the fact that that many of her friendships had changed after she told them that she was diagnosed with cancer, and she is continuing to go to class. She's been able to maintain her schedule, but frankly, many of her friends didn't know how to deal with or to respond to the diagnosis, and so what we've been talking about is other outlets and new friendships that are actually coming into her life. And some friendships that might renew themselves once some of those individuals really figure out, hopefully with some good questions, the kinds of questions to ask to help facilitate a conversation to make sure that the core of that relationship doesn't leave. And you know, some people will leave and relationships change, but consider the people that are important to you and those that are really minimizing stress and are supporting you in the way that you need to be supported. So are they taking care of you? Are you taking care of them? Who's supporting who? And what is really energizing you at this really important time in your life? And I think college is stressful enough, all on its own. A cancer diagnosis or any other change that is unexpected change causes a great deal of stress, and any support that one has. Meaningful support is probably of the most important
Michele,
things.
we did
Please.
have one more
Yep.
question that's related to this before you go forward, if that's okay?
Yeah, please.
So if someone's new to campus or, you know, coming back and their friends don't totally get it, are there ways for students to find other cancer survivors on campus?
That's a great question. I think the best resource there is the counseling center. So many counseling centers have varying groups on campus where students are brought together to talk about the loss of a loved one, or managing time, or managing stress. Sometimes oftentimes I would say an effective counseling center will form those groups based on need. It might not necessarily be a group, but with permission of the individual or individuals who have been diagnosed, the counselor, director of the counseling center, or another counselor, again with permission to introduce, certainly could make an introduction. So again, for you all to get together informally or formally with someone to help facilitate a conversation, which I think would be enormously helpful. But I would say definitely. I was speaking with actually a colleague today about a challenge in her life, and she shared it, and at the end of the meeting, and I think for 40 minutes after the meeting, many of us just sat with her, and we all had our own story, which was very similar to hers. And sometimes if we don't tell the story or take the risk to ask the question about, are there any others like me here, we won't know. So I would definitely point you in the direction of the counseling center.
Great, thanks.
Okay, sure. Any other questions that you see that I might not be?
I think we're good for right now, but I'll let you know at the end of the next slide if there are more.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you. I would actually just ask a question. Are there any folks that are listening now thinking about applying to college? Anyone that maybe took some time away and is thinking about going back to college?
I'm not sure if we know offhand about people on the webinar right now, but I think if you have advice or tips for people who fall into those categories, absolutely put them out there, because our hope is that a lot of people will be accessing this webinar after the fact also. So definitely, it will be relevant whether or not people on the call now are in that situation.
Sure. All right. So with that said, what I'd like to do is just bring forward some voices from higher education administrators, staff, and faculty. So what I realized in working with young adults, although I do feel like I know a lot, I don't know everything. And so what I did a couple of years ago, and I've continued to update these voices, is I reached out to many of my colleagues, staff, and faculty on a variety of campuses. And I asked them some questions, and these questions are questions that are common, at least have been common with many young adults with whom I've worked. So they may be questions that you all have too. So the two most common, one is, I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me, but I have learned so much about myself through this diagnosis, and I want to tell my story. And typically when young adults ask me that, they're either in the process of applying to college and are thinking about filling out their admissions essay, or they've taken some time away and want to go somewhere else and need to write an admissions essay, or they're applying for a grant or a scholarship, and again, they're not quite sure what to say and how much of their story that they can share. So I'd like to share with you a response from a dean of admissions from a four-year college, and I'll let you know what she said. She says, again in direct response, my advice is to be genuine and to include as much as the student is comfortable sharing. Admissions essays can tell us a lot about an applicant and can often point to life challenges that have proven the applicant can overcome incredible odds. For me, as an admissions director, talking about dealing with an illness and lessons learned would tell me that an applicant will face challenges as a student head-on. I would emphasize that the applicant explain what dealing with an illness has taught him or her and how they might use those lessons on campus for themselves and perhaps to help others. I would also caution them that the essay, in my experience, is never the deciding factor. It is only one piece of the admissions process and does not hold anywhere as much weight as does academics and SAT scores. I read very compelling essays from students who have encountered illness and some incredibly difficult life circumstances, but sometimes need to deny them if they are not academically prepared to succeed. I would want such students to know that it is not because of their illness or challenge, and not to feel as though they were judged on that, but that many factors determine admissions, and each college has a different approach. And so some young adults who have heard that have said, it's reassurance that they're not the only one telling a story, that there are many stories that those applying to college share, or many that apply to college share, that it's a piece of the story, it's an important piece. There's no denying that it's a significant part of a young adult's identity, but for so many, and I think what really resonates with me in this colleague's response is this, I think, wise assumption that this person can deal with difficulty, can deal with adversity head-on, and is really excited about moving along and moving on to the next step. The next question that I get a lot of that I get asked a lot is, I don't want anyone to misunderstand, but I may need some campus support, and how do I ask? And this is a response from a dean of students at a four-year university, when what this person said is, just ask. Colleges and universities want students to succeed and provide a number of resources available to assist students. Start with the Dean of Students office or the Disability Services office at your school, and then they will refer you to a multitude of campus support, academic, housing, tutoring, student activities, religious services, etc. And I would say, although I absolutely agree and have a great deal of respect from the person that shared this, again, I would go back to the find one person, or find a number of people. that really work for you. So it's great to know, and now I hope you know more that there are lots of folks on our campuses. But again, it's fine. It's really customizing a network that you feel will really, again, support you in the way that you need. And I just would like, let's see. I want to share actually just one more response, and this is also from a director of admissions from a four-year liberal arts college. And this person says, when meeting a prospective student through either personal essay or interview, I am most convinced by those students who can talk about personal issues, health, poverty, abuse, in ways that recognize the difficulties in dealing with hardship without defining themselves as victims. They tend to acknowledge the past and perhaps the present as part of their history, and within that, describe their plans for the future. For me, that acceptance often seems to spawn a resilience that returns or carries the student forward on a successful path to college life and beyond. And I think that message in that quote about resilience, and hopefully why many of you are participating in this webinar today, is your attitude is, this happened, this sucks, and there's no one that would disagree with you, but the goal is to really move forward. And I would say moving forward with your college or university education is of the absolute best things that you can do. So I will stop there for a moment because I am conscious of our time, and I do absolutely want to leave room for questions. If there, whoops.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Michele. Sorry, I just want to make sure my phone was not on mute. There was a question about whether people can get in touch with you directly, or if you have a website, or if there's some way that you work one-on-one with students and families, you know, or how somebody can attend one of your workshops. Basically, people want to connect with you after this. And so
that's wonderful.
How does that happen?
Yes, absolutely. Please feel free to be in touch with me. I can share my email address. It's Michele, M-I-C-H-E-L-E, Rosenthal, R-O-S-E-N-T-H-A-L @verizon.net, probably the easiest way. And yes, please feel free to email me anytime. I'm happy to have an email conversation with you. I'm happy to meet in person. Any way that I can be helpful to you, I'm happy to be. So yes, Michele Rosenthal @verizon.net is probably the best way.
Excellent. We're actually going to be sending out an email after this webinar that has some resources and other information, so we'll make sure to include that, and certainly we'll provide it to anyone who asks.
And Sam, if I can, I would ask you, so after kind of having heard me go through kind of all of that information and all of those resources, is there anything that I haven't shared that you think would be helpful, or did anything strike you that I just maybe touched on but would be helpful for me to go a little bit more in depth with?
You know, I think there was one point that you made that it resonated with me, because without throwing anyone under the bus, it is how I found you, and that is to find the people or even the one person on a campus that will support you. And if somebody gives you an answer you don't like, then ask somebody else. I think having gone through cancer, you know, like you said, students who go through cancer and then choose to go back to school are pretty determined, hardworking, self-advocating people, right? And so it can be really intimidating to see a dean or see a professor who doesn't want to give you that extra help, who doesn't want to help you, you know, with an accommodation or even just the empathy that you're looking for. And so I just want to underscore something that you said earlier, which is to go find somebody else. You know, there are such good people on a college campus in every corner, and you never know who you're going to cross paths with. And truthfully, that's how I found you. I didn't get the empathy I was looking for from the first person I asked, and I knew that I needed some help, and so I just worked my way to you, and here we are. And I just think it's so important to sort of keep sight of that determination and that drive that you have when you go through cancer treatment, and take it with you to a college campus and just advocate for yourself until you find the answers that you need and you find the support that you need.
Sometimes, thank you, Sam, sometimes colleagues will say, gosh, this work that you do must be so hard, and I say, well, certainly there's a hard part of this, but mostly it's incredibly inspiring for all the reasons that Sam just articulated. It's the resiliency, it's the wanting to move forward with your life, and an attitude which is about the fact that I just need to keep moving forward. I often say, with all due respect, with many students with whom I've worked, that I can be meeting with a student that has a hangnail and is looking for a myriad of exceptions, really, about like why he or she can't take an exam. And then I'll meet someone, a young adult with a significant diagnosis. It might be cancer, it might be another diagnosis, and really, in my experience, all they want to do is move forward. And so I think that energy, that drive, I know that makes a world of difference in a college environment, and it certainly continues to make a difference to those that move on to graduate school and other professional careers.
Excellent. So last call for any last questions that we have. We have just a couple minutes here, and then we're going to share a couple resources again with you guys. All right. Well, if anyone listening to this recording has questions or wants to connect with Michele, or for those of you participating live, if you think of a question later, feel free to email us at webinars@thesamfund.org. Before we officially end, I just want to thank all of you guys for participating and share again the resources that I shared earlier in the beginning of the hour. If you click on our website at www.thesamfund.org/webinar or youtube.com/samfundtv, you'll find not only the recording of this webinar, but the recording of all of our previous webinars. You can find things on health insurance, medical debt, managing student loan debt, family building, life insurance, and there's a whole range of topics on there. We want it to be helpful to you. This recording hopefully will be up by tomorrow, so please share it. Anyone you know that's going through any type of cancer, whether they're in treatment or just finishing treatment, going back to school, please share this with them. Michele, your presentation has been hugely helpful and informative, and we want to make sure that it reaches the broadest audience possible. So for those of you listening, please share it. We also just have one last request.
Right. And
go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
And I wanted to share one other thing. So before, just so you know that.
No problem. Please, once this presentation is done, you'll see a survey pop up. It probably will take you a minute or less. Please take a minute to fill it out and give us feedback, not only on this presentation, but also share any ideas you might have for future topics. We really want this moving forward with your financial health webinar series to be as helpful to you guys as possible. So we take your feedback seriously. We always are looking for ideas for topics. If you have ideas for presenters, we'd love to hear them. So stay in touch with us, and we'll stay in touch with you. If you have any ideas after that survey is done, or you think of something later on, again, you can email us at webinars@thesamfund.org. So, Michele, I will turn it to you with really our truest thanks for taking the hour to present this awesome, helpful webinar. You are just an amazing person, an amazing resource, and the cancer community is really lucky to have you in our corner. So thanks.
Thank you, Sam. I just I'd be remiss if not I didn't share just one other suggestion. I realized that kind of at this time, and when I think about again my interactions with Sam many years ago, this wasn't an option, but it really is now, which is online. So again, for those that might be participating today, that maybe have been out of school for a while or thinking about going back, again, taking some time off. There are so many institutions of higher ed now that offer courses online, and I think that, again, you'd need to get approval about whether that course would count for your degree at your home institution, but that really also is just a brilliant option, and one that, as we all know, didn't exist many years ago. So think about online options too, if that makes sense for your plan. I will also say that because of technology, when I was talking earlier about staying connected co-curricularly, as you all know, just because of our interaction in our daily lives, social media can certainly help you to stay connected too. And again, in finding the right resources on campus and the people that should be in your corner, they should also be helpful to helping you connect, sometimes in person and sometimes just through the the world of technology. So I'll stop there. There's always more to say. But Sam, thank you so much for, again, inviting me. Thanks to Greg and Michele for your help in setting this all up. I'm sorry for our glitches to begin with, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope I have the opportunity to talk with many of you in the days, weeks, or months to come. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Michele. Thanks to all of you for participating. We'll hopefully be doing another webinar soon. So speaking of finding resources online, you can find us on Facebook /the Sam Fund, Twitter /Sam Fund. We're on Instagram and I think a few other sites. Those are our big ones. So find us online, stay in touch. We will connect you as best we can to the resources that you're looking for and welcome you to the Sam Fund community. So Michele, thanks again. Thanks to everyone else. And we will see you back for the next one.